The IMG Roadmap is the only podcast dedicated to coaching international medical graduates in success blueprints for this unique pathway. I am Dr. Nina Loom, your host, a previous IMG turned hospital medicine physician, healthcare administrator, speaker, and coach. I empower, encourage, and equip you with actionable steps that you can take towards the residency position of your dreams. Hi guys, welcome to this episode of IMG Roadmap series. Today, I have a special guest. I met her on Instagram, very inspirational. She's a resident, but I'm not going to talk too much about this. I just want us to get right to the meat of the interview. So why don't you introduce yourself to us, Dr. Amilyn?
Okay, so my name is Amilyn Worlobah, or now I introduce myself as Dr. Worlobah, which is new. So I'm an intern at a family medicine program in Arkansas, and I just finished my first 2 months on Friday, yesterday morning actually, because I was on nights. So I'm just here trying to do my best.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. So can you tell us maybe like what makes you an IMG or a foreign medical graduate?
Yeah. So I went to school at Ross University, which is one of the Caribbean schools. When people ask, I always try to tell them there's not to step on any toes, but there's three major ones, at least that I know about. SGU, which is St. George, Ross University, which used to be on the island of Dominica, but because of the storm that happened, I think 2 years ago now, they moved to Barbados now. And AUC is another one, American University of Caribbean. Those are the three main ones that I know about. There's plenty of others in my program. Like my program is mostly IMGs, which is really nice. So I went to Ross University. I started in January 2013. And the thing about being an IMG, everybody's journey is unique to them. And there's no timeline as far as how long it took you to finish. For me, it took me about 5 years to finish. And that's because I had little breaks here and there in my schedule. But the way it usually works is you're on the island for the first 2 years of medical school. So you do your basic sciences on the island, and then you come back to the US for your clinical rotations. The way my school worked is that you have the freedom to kind of go where you want to go for your clinical rotations. Usually for third year, you're in one space, which I was in New York. I did mine in New York. And then those are your core rotations like OB, family medicine, peds, surgery. There's others I know I'm forgetting, but there's eight of them, I think. And then your fourth year, you do that in wherever you want to do it. You want to stay in one place, that's fine. You want to move around. I moved around because I like to travel. So that was kind of my journey in medical school. And that was over a span of a certain amount of time. And then of course you have your board exams in between that, starting from third year, and then fourth year is usually when you do your step 2 exam. So.
Well, that's awesome. Amazing. Congratulations. Congrats. I'm boarded in family medicine, so I understand exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah.
That's really great. So let me ask you this. Can you kind of walk us through USMLE prep as a foreign medical graduate from a Caribbean school? Because there are some people that IMGs that graduated from schools outside of the Caribbean. So they have, a different 5 or 6 year curriculum. They study differently. So Can you just kind of walk us through your process and how you prepared for boards? And more importantly, how someone else in your position or in the other categories should prepare?
Right. So the way I did mine, so for I'm not sure how all the Caribbean schools work or all foreign schools work, but my school had it so that we had kind of like a board prep, comp. So we had to do a comp exam, which a lot of people might know what I'm talking about when I say comp exam, COMP exam, which is kind of an exam that helps you prepare for the step. So before I left the island, I had a comp exam that we had to do, and you have to pass it. Our school requires us to pass it, or at least you have to take it 2 or 3 times before you can go into your step exam. And part of that is we had Becker. I used Becker to study for my exam. Becker Prep, they have books and online questions that you do. So that's kind of what I did for step 1. And I guess for preparing for step 1, major thing I would tell people to do is questions. I did UWorld questions for both step 1 and step 2 exam, my CK exam in step 2. That's kind of what I did. It took me, for step 1, and again, everybody has their own timeline. So some people feel like, oh my God, I have to take it in 3 months, study in 3 months and be done. Other people study for far longer. I have friends who study for a year for their exam. So it really depends on you, and you have to take it when you're ready. For me, it took me about 6 months to study for mine. I started with UWorld questions. I did my Becker prep, but I was really nervous when taking it because I had friends that failed it. And so I was worried that, oh my God, am I ready? So I took a little longer to study for mine, but thankfully I passed. And that was step one. And I did that before my third year. And then step two, I took during my fourth year. And step two, I also did a lot of UWorld questions. I did Master the Boards, which is a really good book to use to prepare for your step two. What else did I use? USMLE has their step two CK book that's really helpful as well. And I kind of use that as more of a reference guide when I was studying. But questions is the main thing. Questions will prepare you, prepare you for just sitting down for 8 hours and taking that exam, first of all. And there's a lot of, what do they call them? It's like a simulation exam, kind of. So it simulates the exam, and usually that's 4 hours, but the actual exam is 8 hours. So I did that. I did a few of those just to kind of get that, knowing how to sit down for a while, stamina for exams. So that's step two, is a lot of stamina. It's not just your knowledge base, but also are you able to sit down and focus for 8 hours and take an exam? So that was something that I really had to work on. And luckily I was able to do that too. For me, I'm not going to lie, I did fail the exam the first time. And a lot of people have that struggle, especially coming from a foreign school, because as you know, for foreign graduates, it's harder for us to get into residency programs compared to US graduates. US grad, I have friends who failed the exam multiple times, but for them to get in, it wasn't as hard. But there's more of a wait when you're a foreign grad to get into residency. So having to take the exam twice scared me, but I had known a lot of people that did. And luckily for me, I was able to get into residency. But you just have to take your time studying for those exams. Know that you're ready. Don't rush. Don't compare yourself to friends and be like, oh, my friend already took it. Let me rush and do it. And also don't tell yourself, oh, I'm afraid to fail, and then take forever to study for it. Because the longer you wait, you want that knowledge to be fresh in your mind. So I would just say, take it when you're ready and don't be afraid. And if you fail, don't tell yourself the world is over. It's not. There's plenty of people, some will be honest with you, some won't, but there's plenty of people that don't pass the exam the first time around and still get into residency and still are very successful today. So don't be afraid.
Wow. Yeah, thank you so much for opening up about that.
Yeah.
I think failure is something that we can either take and create a new lesson out of and be empowered by it, or we get drowned under the pressure of being a failure. And so we allow it to define us instead of, hey, what can I learn from this and how do I
learn from it?
Exactly. I really appreciate you for opening up about that, because that's an area that I get a lot of IMGs who email me and say, should I just give up? Should I even keep trying? And I'm like, you can't stop, because the only way you're going to know if you can make it is if you try. Exactly. And so I really, really appreciate you opening up about that. That's such a sensitive topic, but you being here and talking about it so openly is just so refreshing. Thank you. Yeah. So just some other additional tips. So, ERAS opens soon, September 5th. Can you just talk to me a little bit more about how to prepare your ERAS packet?
That is really coming up. I just realized that. It's like almost a new interview cycle. Yeah, so to prepare for that, right now, for those who are preparing to enter this application cycle, you should be, let me see where I was at this time last year. Because for me, I graduated and I took a year off, I really needed to just relax. And so I used that time, I was scribing during that time. But at this point in August, you should at least have your, what do we call it? The essays done. So you should have at least all the essays, the entry, what is it called? Do you remember?
Personal statement.
Personal statement. Thank you. That is the word I'm looking for. So your personal statement should be at the point where it's almost ready to upload it to ERAS, because I think they start uploading September 5th, right, is when you can start uploading your documents. So at this point, personal statement doesn't have to be ready, but it should be at the point where you're ready to give it to somebody that you trust, whether it's a mentor, one of your attendings, a resident even, to have them look over it and tell you, is there anything you need to fix, anything you need to adjust, you need to go and rephrase anything, revise anything before uploading it to ERAS. Because your personal statement, while some people might tell you it doesn't weigh a lot, it does. They look at your grades, of course, they're gonna look at your GPA, but your personal statement is where you get to kind of explain your own journey and talk about yourself, talk about things you've learned over the course of medical school, talk about lessons, and just kind of so they get to know you as a person, which that's important too. I mean, they look at numbers, but they want to know who you are, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to help them decide. So that personal statement kind of gives you the freedom to do that. And you can use it for your best, or you can use it and just throw it away. But you want to use that to your advantage. So your personal statement should be ready. And just when preparing for ERAS, speaking to foreign medical graduates, you want to use Match a Resident. Match a Resident is a really good resource for kind of going through what programs you would get accepted in. Like I talked about earlier, For foreign medical graduates, it's a lot harder for us. That's something that wasn't explained to me before going to Ross, that it is harder for us to match just because the openings, there's less spots for us in each residency program. And there's some residency programs that want to see IMG, they throw your application away. That's just the truth of the matter. That's how it works. So there's only some that will actually take foreign medical graduates. So Match a Resident, I use that to kind of filter out those programs, because what a lot of people that were before me advised me is that you don't want to waste money. ERAS is money. It's money. Each program costs you money. Each application costs money. So they said you don't want to waste money applying to programs that are not going to look at your application. And that's just the hard truth being an IMG. There are programs that's not going to look at our application. So ERAS kind of helped me filter through those programs and see which programs are more IMG friendly, which is a word we use. And you can Google IMG friendly programs, whether you're applying to OB, family, peds, surgery, whatever. Google IMG friendly programs and that will give you a good list. But Match a Resident tells you the GPA that's required, the step scores. It will give you step 1 score minimum, step 2 score minimum if the program has a minimum. And that really helps you to organize which programs you want to apply to and kind of prioritize those programs. I made an Excel sheet, which helped me a lot. And I just passed that on to some of my friends who are applying for this cycle. And the Excel sheet, I kind of organized it by do they have a step 1 minimum? Do they have a step 2 minimum? Do I meet that minimum? How diverse is the program? Because that was important to me as well. If they have any opportunities for outside rotations, like away rotations or even global electives, I looked at that. So I kind of organized based on what I want, and you can organize your list or whatever based on what categories you want to see in each program, what's important to you about each program. Once you have that organized, when you're going through these lists and trying to see where you want to apply, you will know, okay, do they fit my criteria? Do they fit where I want to go? So that's kind of what I did. And then, of course, you have to be practical. Can you even get into the program? Are your scores good enough to get into the program? And again, don't give up. There are some programs that say, oh, they want 215 minimum on step 2 CK. Maybe you have 213, maybe you have 210. But again, personal statement is where they kind of get to know you. If you did any extracurricular stuff in medical school, if you were president of a committee or president of a student organization, you put that on your CV. That's something that programs look at. Sometimes they're willing to look past your step 2 score, past your step 1 score. So you have to think about all those things when you're applying and just ask yourself, can I get in? Just like with medical school, you have your high reach programs and then you have your programs that you know are safe for you to get in. Apply to however many you want to apply to. For IMGs, I was always advised, and you don't have to go with this, but I was always advised to apply to at least 100 programs per specialty. So a lot of people I know, let's say they wanted to do family or they want to do OB or they want to do peds, they will apply to 2. I have a lot of friends who did IM and family. So they applied to 2 specialties and they applied to 100 programs each or maybe 50 programs each if their score was really, really high. I did family and I also did a few peds because I really do like peds, but then I like family because it includes everything I want to do. I really like OB, I like peds, and I do like IM once in a while. So that family kind of encompasses all that for me. So I applied to more family programs, but look at what you want, look at where you see yourself and apply to those programs, apply to those specialties, but make sure you apply to a good number of each of those specialties, whether you want to split it. If you're like, I'll be happy with IM, I'll be happy with family, apply 50-50 each. If you really like OB, but you want to use family, apply to more OB, apply to enough family to keep you safe. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to get into residency. There's a lot of people that are sitting right now that wish they were in your position, they wish they were in my position. They've graduated medical school, but they can't get in. And that's the reality for a lot of foreign graduates, which is unfortunate. So you want to be realistic when you're applying, but also don't give up when you're applying. Still apply to high reach programs. And another big thing that just crossed my mind is connections. Connections help a lot. People will not tell you, but having those connections, if there's friends that you know in medical school and they are now a 3rd-year resident, a 2nd-year resident, talk to them. Do not be afraid to reach out to people and be like, look, I really want to apply to this program. You know my struggle, or you know what, because everybody has a story. Everybody has a struggle. Not a lot of people are open about it, but everybody has a story. There's a guy who's in my residency program right now. He's a US grad and he took step 2 3 times. Some people don't want to talk about it. So everybody has a struggle, but you want to use your connections and talk to people because that helps a lot. When it comes to when they're ready to sit down and when the programs are ready to sit down and say which residents do they want, some of them have 10 spots and there's thousands of residents that applied. Then they go through their interviews and maybe they interviewed like 40 residents. At the end of the day, if there's somebody sitting there that says, I know them, they're really good, they would be really great with this program, they will blend in, they'll match with us, they'll stand out and be great, but they'll really be able to work with our program, that's going to help you a lot when they're ranking you. So just make sure to use your connections, but also be realistic about where you're applying as well. I guess that's the main thing I have to say about that.
Yeah. Again, man, I'm like listening to you. I'm like, man, I wish I could listen to her before I was applying.
Yeah, well, these are things I wish I knew. So, I like to tell people, I'm just trying to think of it as it goes, because, I'm sleepy right now. So.
Yeah. You mentioned something. You said you scribed sometime in between school.
Mm-hmm.
I've had somebody email me once asking if a scribe job was beneficial should they put that on their CV. I don't know the answer to that question, because it's one of those things where, it would be considered subservient to a medical position. But was that ever talked about at any point when you interviewed, and was that even important?
They talked about it. The reason I did it is just because I didn't want to sit idle for a year. I know a lot of people travel for a year. Unfortunately, I was broke. I couldn't do that. So I needed something to do, and I wanted to work just to keep my mind fresh, because I know I was sitting out for a year. So I wanted to work and do something while I was applying for residency, and I just needed that time off as well. I searched Indeed.com, and I kind of looked up stuff, and I came across scribing. I'm like, well, I'm already graduated. I can do it. I can do it all, and they won't have to really guide me through it, which a lot of the people I worked with during scribing, I appreciated that I was a graduate, because they're like, I don't have to correct your notes. Like, you know what you're doing. So it was talked about during interviews, actually. When they just saw that, they're like, oh, explain what you did, like explain scribing, explain, what you did when you were scribing. Did you actually have any patient interaction? And that's the only thing that kind of stuck for me, is even though I was a medical graduate, within that scribing, and it depends where you scribe, because I know some people that scribe between medical school and residency, and they actually worked as a doctor, where in those it was like smaller areas, small rural areas, where once the employees found out they graduated medical school, they were like, okay, well, you can help, do other things other than just scribing. Unfortunately for me, I was with a bigger company, so I had to stay in my scribing bubble and just write notes. But they did talk about it. It did come up at a few of my interviews, and just kind of explain what I did. I told them that I didn't really have any direct patient interaction, but once the attendings that I worked with, or doctors that I worked with, because it wasn't always attendings, once they found out that I was a medical graduate, they kind of helped me to ask me to do interviews for them and stuff like that, just to get that part of the way. But I couldn't really touch the patient, which sucked for me, but they talked about it. Yeah. And I would say for people who, whether you're reapplying, because again, that's also another struggle that IMGs go through, is they don't match the first time, which I would say everybody goes through that, but it sucks more for IMGs, because when you don't match that first time to get in, it's also another struggle again for the second cycle. So if somebody is looking for something to do in between that year that they have when they're reapplying, or if you sat out and you're applying for the first time, scribing will be a good option. If you can find a scribing position somewhere where they will allow you to do more with the patient other than just writing notes, that will be great. Some people also, I heard that there's some places that allow you to work as a doctor under somebody else's license. So that is also another option for somebody who's looking for something to do while they're sitting out for a year. And then, of course, people talk about taking step 3, but I haven't taken that yet, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing on that. So we're coming close to the end of the interview. I usually like to ask, because there's tons of people that watch this and then they want to get in contact with you. How can they reach out to you? Where do they find you?
Well, Instagram is good. I'm not going to lie. My first 2 rotations of residency so far have been tough. So I've been less active on social media, but Instagram is still a good place to reach me. You can DM me. I don't know if I need to say my handle or whatever, but also email is a good place to reach me. I have a Gmail, so I can get that to you too.
Okay, we'll include that in the notes here when you send it over. And then any final words for family medicine aspirants, so people that are looking to apply?
Yeah, so for family medicine, I would say when you're looking to apply, family medicine is a great place, just that there's more residency spots available for family residents compared to some of the harder ones to get into, or I shouldn't say harder, but some of the more specialized, like surgery, for example, has way less spots for IMGs than family medicine does. So when you're looking to apply, I would say just, first of all, be happy that you're in this process, that you're at this point in your journey where you can apply to residency. And family medicine is a great place because, like I said, it encompasses everything. And if you're interested in everything, make sure at your interviews to say that why you want to do family medicine, and really ask yourself before you even go into interviews, why do I want to do family medicine? What is the reasoning behind it? Make sure to explain that at interviews. For me, like I said, I really like that it encompasses all the specialties that I did like during medical school. And I would say just be positive about your journey and
Maybe close with a mantra. Give us your one piece of advice that you definitely would tell your younger self.
Right. One thing I would tell myself is to not give up. That's one thing I would say. Because when I was applying, again, like I said, because I had to take step 2 twice, I was a little nervous. I would say enter in, especially with this new application cycle. I would speak to those who are applying this year, especially. For this new application cycle, those of you who are entering and applying to family medicine, like I said, be positive. Know that you made it this far in your journey. And because you made it this far and you have the ability to apply, that means there's a really good chance of you getting in. Don't get in your head. Don't be negative about what your journey is. Kind of use your journey. One thing I always say, because they will ask you about scores, they'll ask you about struggles that you had. Residency programs like to know that thing. They're not just going to stay positive. Be like, why'd you get this score? Why'd you do this? Always turn whatever negative you had into a positive. Use it as a learning experience. Say, this so happened to me, but I took that and now this is where I am. This is how I made it. I always like to say that with every tribulation, of every test, there's a testimony. Testimony, you can't spell testimony without test. So just know that every test and tribulation you went through, there will be a testimony at the end of the day. Whether it takes you a year to get in, 2 years to get in, whether you get in right away, that is your personal journey. And use your personal journey, your personal struggles, whatever your victories, your struggles, all of that is part of your story at the end of the day. And know that there will be a testimony at the end of the day. There will be. It will take you time to get there. It might take you time to get there. It took all of us time to get there. We all have our own individual journeys. But at the end of the day, you will get there. And just don't get in your head and don't be negative. Stay positive throughout the entire thing and use whatever victories, whatever tribulations you had, and tell yourself there is a testimony at the end of the day. Right now, there's a testimony. The fact that you're applying for residency is a testimony in itself. And you will get there. Just stay positive and know that there's a program out there for you that's looking for you, that's going to want you at the end of the day. And family medicine is great. I love it. I'm loving it so far. I'm tired. Sorry, guys. Excuse my appearance, but I just finished nights. But it is a rewarding field, and you get there. Just be positive. That's what I have to say.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Amilyn. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate that you took some time out. I know you were working. You've been on night float.
Yeah, sorry. 2 hours of sleep here.
Sleep cycle, and so I really appreciate it. And I know this is going to be very beneficial for at least one IMG, and that's why we do what we do here. Thank you for joining in, and I hope
Thank you for having me.
All right.